Hi, I'm Jodi Daniels, founder and CEO of Clover Advisors and privacy consultant. Today, we're going to talk about GDPR. And what is GDPR and why do we even need to care about what these four letters even mean? GDPR is the General Data Protection Regulation, and it's one of the strictest privacy laws around the world. And if you fall in scope within GDPR, understanding and maintaining compliance and the requirements is critical. Why is it critical? Well, our customers expect that we're complying with this law. And if we don't, we have a very significant chance of losing customers. In fact, I've seen this happen where companies receive a call from a customer, ask if they are compliant with GDPR, and they can't get the business or close the sale until they've complied. And data privacy regulations are here to stay. They're becoming more popular in other states and countries around the world. And complying with GDPR also puts you in a great place for complying with other laws. It's considered one of the gold standards of privacy. So when you comply with this one, as new ones emerge, you'll be in a great place to be able to comply with those. So why do we even care about GDPR? Well, if you fall within the scope of GDPR, understanding and maintaining compliance requirements is important. Additionally, our consumers, our customers expect our organization to protect their data. And if we don't, we will lose customers. Time and time again, I see companies receive a contract. The customer asks them to comply with GDPR, and then the company's not prepared and they can lose the sale. And GDPR is really the foundational privacy law around the world. And there are additional countries and jurisdictions that are taking note and passing their own privacy laws. So data privacy regulations are becoming even more popular in other states and countries and are here to stay. So again, what is GDPR? It's the General Data Protection Regulation, and it regulates the way data is handled across sectors within the EU or the European Economic Area, known as the EEA. And as we're going to talk about, you'll see that protection is going to cover both use and collection, as well as security. GDPR provides citizens with the right to protect their own personal data and privacy. And who's in scope, you might ask? Well, GDPR includes all data controllers and processors located in the EU and all data processing that is in the context of the EU. But what's really important is maybe you're listening and you're a United States company. You're not in the EU. You don't have an EU office. If you process data on an EU citizen, you might be deemed what's known as a processor. And that could put you in scope for GDPR. If you're targeting customers, you're targeting individuals in the EU for your goods or services, that puts you in scope for GDPR. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the definitions. And I've hinted a little bit at them just now when we talked about a processor or a controller. So let's start there. We talk about this idea of a processor and a controller. What is a processor or a controller? Well, the formal definition for a processor is the natural or legal person, public authority, agency, or any other body which processes personal data on behalf of the controller. So what does that mean? It takes directions from the controller. What's the controller? The controller is essentially the organization that is determining how data will be processed. Its formal definition, the natural or legal person, public authority, agency, or other body, which determines the purposes and means of processing data. When we're talking about processing data, well, what are we talking about? So personal data under GDPR is any information relating to an identified or identifiable natural person, which is known as the data subject. And then we need to understand, what is personal data or personal information? And it's important to realize that it's your name and contact information, but it's so much more. because it can include data that maybe alone wouldn't be considered personal data. When you put it together with other data pieces, it could identify who you are. And so therefore it has the ability as a natural, it's an identifiable natural person who could be identified directly or indirectly from a variety of different pieces of data when combined. Is your business located in the EU? Do you do business with consumers who are located in the EU? If your business is outside of Europe, are you selling goods or services to people in the EU? Are you monitoring the behavior of European residents? Do you have business with data controllers or data processes that are established in the EU? Is your business processing data of consumers within Europe? And this is an important one if you are a service provider, because all your direct customers could be here in the United States, but the data that they're sending you to be processed is that of people from the EU. And that makes you a processor. And so then, are you processing data in the context of the EU? It is critical to know you do not have to be in the EU for GDPR to be applicable to you. If you answered yes to any of my questions, GDPR applies to you. So what happens if you say, I don't want to comply? There's significant fines. There are data breaches that can happen. And if there's a data breach that happens, there are very specific requirements under GDPR that you have to adhere to. And then if you don't protect the data as required by GDPR, that can lead to a data breach. You might have lost sales when a customer won't do business with you because you don't take GDPR or privacy and security seriously enough. They might sue you, and ultimately, you could have a loss of trust from them. If a company can't believe that you're going to take their privacy and security seriously, they're going to take their business elsewhere. And now it's much harder for me to be able to establish that relationship with you. So how much can I be fined? Well, I can be fined up to 20 million euro or 4% of your business's annual global revenue, whichever is higher if you violate GDPR. A really important piece under GDPR is that individuals have a variety of rights. And we're going to have a whole separate module on really digging into these rights. So for today, we're going to talk about just the high level of what these are. So the idea is right to access my information, right to change my information, right to delete, right to restrict the processing, the right to port data outside of the company, the right to object to processing of data, the right to be informed, the privacy notice, and also the right to not be subject to automated decision making. We've talked a lot about personal data. What types of personal data are we even talking about? Well, name, contact information, what you probably would expect is certainly personal information, my phone number, my bank account, my birth date, national identity, marital status, my medical records, job information, visa information. Additionally, online identifiers, that IP address, that cookie, or the geolocation information, the ID number, all of those online identifiers that can be connected to other data points can put it in scope and be considered personal data under GDPR. Also unique to GDPR is sensitive personal data. Race, political views, religious or philosophical beliefs, trade union membership, health or genetic data, biometric data, sexual orientation, past or spent criminal convictions. These types of data elements are very sensitive to the individual, and if used or misused or in the wrong hands, could significantly jeopardize the rights and freedoms of the individual. That is the heart of GDPR, is protecting the individual's rights. GDPR and the EU philosophy to privacy is individual first, company second. To process data in the EU, you must have one of 6 legal grounds. There's consent, legitimate interest, which is a little bit of a catch-all, and because of that, there's a special 3-part balancing test that has to be performed anytime you rely on legitimate interest, which could be I need to understand how products and services are used. I'm doing analytics, maybe I'm fraud, some other type of purpose. That might be legitimate interest. Contract, legal obligation, public authority, and vital interest. Those last two are often typically not used by a private company. To process this personal data, you again must have one of these 6 legal grounds for each purpose of processing, which then says, well, what type of data do you have? And how do you use it? Where is it stored? And who do you share it with? To comply with any part of GDPR, it is critical that you're able to answer these questions. Now, there are many other factors to complying with GDPR. There's security obligations. There's something called a data protection officer. And there's cross-border movement, the ability for data to move across countries. There are a variety of other requirements under GDPR that we didn't touch on here today. Here, we really wanted to cover the scope of GDPR and a little bit of the type of data that might be included and some of the basic principles. So today, thank you so much for listening. You can always go to redcloveradvisors.com for additional information and stay tuned for our next lesson. Thank you.